Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I'm excited to talk to you today and my buddy Al Nicoletti. We're going to be talking about probates here. He really is probably the leading probate expert, certainly in the state of Florida and maybe nationwide. And we're going to talk a lot about probates today and the opportunity that's there. We're also going to talk a lot about the power in kind of niching down because that's exactly what Al does, and his career has kind of taken off. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there for those of you that get shiny object syndrome every other day, maybe every day. So anyway, excited to talk to Al today. Al, welcome to the show, buddy.
Mike, I'm so happy to be here. Honored to be on the Investor Fuel podcast, and I'm ready to talk probate business and whatever Mike Hambright has for me.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I've got a hit list for you here that we're gonna kind of go through. So before we get started here, you and I have known each other for a few years now, and you've done an amazing job. You at the end we'll kind of share how folks can connect with you, but you have an amazing show as well that I was actually on a couple weeks back, and so a couple of podcasters here. It's always fun having podcast host to podcast host calls because you do it so like sometimes I'm not saying I don't want to take anything away from I've also interviewed a couple people lately that it was the first podcast they've ever been on, so not taking anything away from those folks, but like host to host there's always a good flow of conversation just because this is what we do, right?
yeah and it's always different being on the other side of being a host, because as host you're maneuvering the conversation and trying to keep it going,
right? And
then the guest is given the value. You guys are going back and forth, but like you said, it is always rewarding, and I love being on this side too.
Yeah, it's fun. You don't have to worry about keeping the wheels on the bus as much.
Yes.
Yeah. So, hey, before we jump into this, tell us a little bit about you for those that don't know you.
Yeah, so I am a probate lawyer in Florida. I handle probates all day long for investors that are finding deals, or realtors, or real estate professionals. And I have my own law firm, and I've had it now it's about to be 4 years. I've primarily made the practice probate. And my unique model to having worked out this system is the fact that anybody that gets a deal that needs probate, or the title company says, hey, we got to do this, our unique proposition is I will get paid at the closing, which means that there's nothing up front, and we just take all the risk at the back end and get paid off the HUD. But yeah, I've been doing this now. I've been a lawyer now for almost 9 years. Originally from Miami, moved up to Jacksonville, and just the story of just how things transpired and how things got started has just been such a journey for me that once in a while I need to take a step back and reflect on where it's gone, how it's been, and where things are going. And it's been fun. We're loving it. And I am never more excited to be in this probate niche and doing stuff in the real estate market.
Yeah, that's great. And I've been known to make some jokes, and I've heard jokes before about Florida essentially being heaven's doorstep. So I guess if there was ever a state to be a good state for probates, it's probably Florida, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every day, one thing I used to talk about, Mike, was back when I was doing a lot of presentations in 2018, 2019, was really pushing the probate message out there. Once I hit Jacksonville, everybody's like, who's Al? And then, I really started talking about this. One of my first slides was the trajectory of where the baby boomer market's going, and talking about the silver tsunami. And back then I remember doing a presentation in 2020 before COVID hit. And I told everybody, I said, get ready for 2025, 2035. And somebody was like, get ready for 2035. And it's like, well, I think everybody's now seeing what Al is talking about, because fast forward 7 years later, now everybody's scrambling to get into this niche. And so, yeah, with Florida's huge. I mean, how many people moved here from the pandemic? How many people keep buying property? How many people bought property in the 70s and 80s, kept on the property because they thought they were going to build and transfer it to their family, and they never did. And now the kids find out that they own property and want to sell. So yeah, it's a huge market for potential probates and leads.
Yep. So let's take a deep dive on some of the probate stuff, but let's start kind of simple. Like a lot of real estate investors know that a probate is generally filed when somebody passes away, which might create an opportunity for us to help a family and help ourselves in the process. I mean, let's be honest, as real estate investors, we don't wish for death, divorce, inheritance, like all the distress signals that drive properties to us. But it's a way, it also creates an opportunity to help people through a difficult situation as well. So it's not like we don't want anybody to die, but we can't stop anybody from dying either. And so
Yes.
it creates this opportunity. So maybe just kind of high level, what is a probate? Like, how do you, as an expert, define what a probate is?
Yeah, so on a very basic level, what we're looking for in Florida is where you see a piece of property and that property, the title, the deed, uh, somebody's on that deed and the name of that person is deceased, or it could be multiple people.
Yeah.
So sometimes people buy property together, or maybe they all inherited it together, or but usually if you have a husband and wife, or just a husband or a single person. If that person on that title is deceased, we're looking at probate. And what that means is, and there's no getting around it in Florida. Like a lot of people ask me that question too, Mike, about, hey, can we just do the affidavit of heirs? Can we just do this? Like, no, there's no doing that. Like we need to
Yeah.
do the process
Which
because,
that you can do that in Texas.
right, I've heard all
Affidavit of
about,
heirship, right? Yep.
yeah, yeah. But really what we're doing is we're preparing all the paperwork that we need that list who the deceased is, what the asset is, who the beneficiaries are, what the distribution amount is. We're preparing it, we're sending it to the heirs, we're getting it back, and we're filing it in court because what that probate essentially does is it transfers the title out of that person's name to who the heirs are, and those heirs get declared they're the heirs per court order. And then what we're doing is then taking that court order that gets recorded, or maybe when we need to record it, and we send that to the title company. And then that is what is used for the clear to close so that somebody can buy the property, or maybe they just want to keep it. They don't want to do anything with it. But it's that process of filing it in court, getting it back, getting court orders, and being done. And people think that it's this long, complicated process. And I'd say, Mike, 80 to 90% of the probates that we do are in and out, file close, file close, file close. Only a small percentage of those are the ones that everybody hears about, that are the big ones, the huge ones. But that's really what it is. And we can't get around it either. Title insurance for title companies, they require it on their title commitments as well. So,
Right.
everybody goes, hey, can we just close and then worry about the probate after? It's like, no, we got to do that first, then you can close. So that's that whole process.
Yeah. What are some things that cause complexity? Like a couple of things that I'm guessing are number of heirs and also maybe length of time between the time the person died and that it's coming up. Or am I right in saying that? And what are some other things that cause some complexity?
Well, you would think that the date of death would cause complexity. Actually, could cause complexity sooner than later. Sometimes the longer they've held on to the property, the less procedures and things that have to be done, because then we don't have to worry about creditors. But in terms of complexities, I would say the number of heirs, of course, is going to be one, because a lot of these properties end up being primary residences, and with primary residences, you're going to need the participation of all the heirs. So if we do a full breakdown of a potential probate and we find out, and I do it and I find out, oh, there's 10 kids and you want to buy it, my first thing I would say to you, Mike, is, hey, Mike, you got to get all 10. And so that complexity of where are they? Oh, we've talked to them. We haven't spoken to them in 30 years. That's a complicated nature
Yeah.
of some of these families haven't talked in a while. Just to give you a crazy story on complexity and families, I was on a conference call about 4 weeks ago, and it was just a simple deal, nothing complicated, and there were just a total of 3 heirs, and I didn't think anything of the conference call. I just went into it like I usually do any consult, and we were supposed to have 3 of them on, only 2 showed up, and when one of them showed up, they said, "Where's the other guy?" The other guy shows up, And the way that they talked, it almost sounded like they hadn't talked in 4 weeks, that they saw each other at the baseball game, or maybe they saw each other at dinner. But lo and behold, I find out that what started off as a very calm conversation escalated 15 minutes later to fighting and saying, be gone, good luck, finding out that they hadn't talked in 10 years.
Wow.
So bringing families together is a complicated thing when it comes
Yeah,
to these
yeah.
probate deals. But numbers too, Mike. A lot of investors get a high from the contract. They get a high from, I got a hold of somebody. But there's all these other logistics that you need to find out, because just because you got a deal locked up for 5 and you're going to sign it for 8, well, what kind of probate are we? If we're looking at probate, those are tough numbers. So running numbers is a big problem as well. Or due diligence with title is something that a lot of people miss as well. It's great that you got them under contract. It's great that you got everybody on the deal. But then when title comes, you got back taxes, code enforcement liens, 2 phantom mortgages, a HELOC, and then now it's going to need 4 probates because the analysis is crazy. And it's like, what started off as a high just went to what a headache, and what do we do? Or an IRS lien. So a lot of investors get into these deals, and there's some of these complexities, or locating heirs. And we'll dive in on that with like building out family trees, but the locating people, it's like, you got a great deal, but it's like we're missing one person, and it's
Right.
killing the deal. It's like, where is this? How do you find them? Where do you go? How do you do the research? So
Yeah.
those are just a few. I mean, just to name a few off the top of my head, with diligence for
Yeah.
sure.
Talk a little bit about, I know this is probably different from state to state. Lots of states have different laws, right? But like the role of a will in there in terms of like a lot of times when a probate happens, I know that my belief is, my assumption is if there's a clear will of what should happen, it's a little more clear than there's no will and a bunch of heirs out there. Am I right in saying that?
Well, so on a very like a basic level, in Florida at least, if there's a will, it still has to go through probate. So the complexity with the will part is, where's the will? Where's the original ink will? Who's named in the will? Is it properly executed? Like, there's a lot of things that we have to do on our analysis point, because sometimes the will just leave it to one person or 2 people, and maybe there's 6 heirs, but the other 4 got left out. So anytime we're
Does that
dealing,
simplify it? Does that simplify it? You don't need to contact the other 4 in that instance, or
of course, it depends on the scenario and how the language is in the will, but
yeah.
sometimes it can, but sometimes it doesn't, because some of these people will do self-made wills, and they won't get it witnessed correctly, or they're going to
Okay.
miss a required page that Florida wants, and then
Yeah.
it makes it more complicated. Sometimes the ones where there's no will makes it very straightforward, because at that point nobody's contesting anything. It's like, it
The
is what
law
it
is the
is.
law, right?
Well, right, the law is the law. It's like, it says what it says. So um, that's what we see when we get to these will situations, and I see a lot of wills that are messed up, not properly executed, and sometimes we have to get around it and get creative.
Yeah, yeah. Let some of the opportunity here for folks that are listening to this that are real estate investors is your willingness to do hard things, right? Like I think if you're a real estate investor and it's just about the numbers and you go in and you're like, I'll pay you 50 grand for this dump or whatever, and people are and they're just if they're just price shopping, the seller that is, then they're going to take the highest price. But if you know there's a probate involved and you know there's a messy situation, it could be things other than probates as well. If you can kind of be that knowledge expert, at least initially, like if you're willing to be more of a consultant and help hold somebody's hand through that process and connect them with a guy like you or a firm like yours, right? And basically kind of be that trusted advisor. People are often willing to like not be as sensitive on price, right? Because like they're getting more than just price. They're getting your kind of expertise or your willingness to kind of hold their hand through the process. But it also builds up a lot of trust, right? So talk about that. I mean, I generally say, any entrepreneur, if you're willing to do hard things, you're going to win because most entrepreneurs are lazy and they're not willing to do hard things. But just talk about that initial, in your experience, that initial investor meeting with somebody that might be going through a probate situation or might have to, of being more of a consultant versus just all about the house, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that's just the servient mindset, right? They're trying to help that person go through their pain points. And so I
Right.
think, and of course I'll say this, I'm not on the sales call with the acquisitions to hear kind of like what they're exactly saying, but
Right.
some examples that we've just seen is, it's not just about the house, but it's about maybe there's a life insurance policy or a bank account, or they're trying to sell the cars that are on the property, or there's, sometimes they need assistance with trying to get something or groceries, or, you know, there's a lot of things that just don't involve the house and that some of the people, these heirs need, or maybe it's help finding other relatives. They just don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Um, the thing that was going through my head when you were explaining that, Mike, is it's really funny because I'd say some investors right now, they've gotten to the point of talking to these heirs and saying, "Hey, like, listen, you know, here's what we can do. If we find out that we pull the title work and we're going to need probate, we're going to put you in really good hands with Al and his team. And what they'll be able to do is have an initial free consultation. You don't have to pay for the consult. And if everything works out, what Al will do is Al will wait until the closing for the payment. And depending on the price, we'll talk about what that looks like, whether it comes off the seller side, the buyer side. And I think it's having those hard conversations too with the seller about price, sometimes too with probate, that ends up being a sticking point. Like, for example, sometimes the investors, what they'll do is they'll say it's coming off the seller side. As far as me, I don't really care where it comes off. It comes off buyers,
Right.
sellers, as long as I have consents, that's me. But they'll have that hard conversation, say, "Hey, it's got to come off your side." Then I drop the quote during the consult, and then the seller, freezes, and then the question becomes, are they willing to do that? And sometimes the investor will go, "Hey, how about this? I heard Al's price. I'll come halfway with you. That way we can get this done, work things out." And it's those conversations that are important, or even just the follow through afterwards. Like, we have a case right now. It was a wild case where it was two probates. We had to stall a foreclosure auction to save the property. And I've never encountered this with stalling the auction before, where the bank said, "Sure, we'll give you 120 days as long as you agree that you can't cancel it again." So that put a lot of pressure on me to be like, "All right, I got to get these two probates done."
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't about the house that was the big concern. The concern was the fact that there was about $100,000 in a life insurance policy, but we couldn't get to that yet because we needed to address the house. Well, we got the property stalled, we got the probates done. That property got sold in October. We're still dealing with the life insurance policy now. And you know who's been helping them? The investor. They haven't stopped. So they held their word, right? And
Yeah.
so if you can hold your word with the sellers and really talk to them about what you can help with, they'll stick with you, they'll stay with you, and you never know who they know, or somebody that they're working with that may say, "Hey, you should go talk to Mike. Mike's the one helping me on this." So
Yeah.
you never know.
Talk about like working with experts like you, and then maybe share some guidance for folks. Because obviously you are the kind of Florida guy, right? If you're in Florida right now and you deal with probates, like your search is over. You just need to talk to Al. But I know we're going to talk a little bit here about being super niche down. You're a probate guy in Florida, and like there's 49 other states, and you don't care, right? So let's talk about like how folks can find somebody like you, if that's even possible, Al, like in their state. Like how do they? Because I told you this up front. I did a little bit of research a number of years back on in my market, DFW, like which attorneys are doing probates, and it turned, I don't remember the exact numbers because it's been quite a while since we did that study. But I thought, hey, I'm going to start building relationships with all these probate attorneys. And it turns out, even in a market of 8 million people, there were a couple of attorneys that did a ton, and there were like thousands that did one. And it's just like, because a lot of attorneys are generalists, right?
Right.
But how do you find those experts that an investor can kind of hitch their horse to, right? And say, like, whenever I have a probate situation, this is who I'm going to work with in my market. How do they even find that person?
There's definitely a couple ways. One, maybe it's somebody that we know on my end, right?
Okay.
I've been doing it long enough to see and connect with some that are in those local markets. Like great example, Texas, South Carolina, Illinois, Arizona. There's definitely a few markets, oh, Colorado. Like over time, you never know who knows these people, and what better way to first ask and say, "Hey, Al, maybe you know somebody." But if we don't, another good way to go about this is to join your local RIAs or local meetups. And sometimes you get opportunities to speak up at those meetups and, and talk about a deal or a question or a problem. And what you want to do is speak up and say, "Hey, I got this deal right now. Who does everybody go to for probate? What's the go-to for probate?" Or maybe you can say, "Hey, who are the big whales in these groups? Who do you go to?" Because if they're doing volume, they must be working with the right
They
expert.
should know. Yeah.
Probate or not, like,
Right.
it doesn't matter. They're successful at getting volume in business because they're going to the right people.
Yep.
So that's one. And of course, the Facebook groups have been really huge too.
Mm.
We've been seeing a lot of success with that. Once in a while, I'll get, a notification of somebody says, "Hey, I'm looking for a probate lawyer in Florida." And of course, my name's, littered in the comments
Yeah.
section.
Right.
But same thing. I mean, why not take it to Facebook and say, I'm in Alabama right now. I'm trying to find an attorney over here. Does anybody know?" And you just never know. So
Yep.
ask, but you definitely want to qualify. I think the qualifying is important too, because just because you're given a name doesn't mean that they're like an Al in that state. Like if
Right.
you come to me, Mike, this is 95% of my practice is probate. Like this is what I do. I am
Right.
not a generalist. I don't like that because it I love the high volume model because I know it works. I'm in and out. I know that system. The generalist stuff, it takes your attention away from things that you can do and make money on that makes you great.
Yep.
So you want to qualify and find out what's the percentage of their practice of probate. Are they working with investors and realtors? Like, how do they work a lot in the real estate deals? Because if you're doing probate and you work with real estate people, you must know how to navigate through those messy situations.
Sure. Yeah.
Are you a specialist? Are you a title company? Like, not that that matters in the sense you have to be a title company or not, because I don't do closings, but sometimes you want to know, like, how can they help in some of the deals? Maybe they can get creative, or maybe they know people that can get creative. So I would say the biggest way is to ask your questions and find out. And you can use me as an example. We do it every day. We work with investors, realtors, title companies, you name it. And every day we're trying to solve these messy situations everybody's getting. And
Right.
we're thinking about how to get the deal closed. Like a lot of lawyers are not thinking about that. The lawyers are thinking about, "Oh, this is the court order you need. That's it. Like, let's just try it this way." I've seen too much on the title insurance end to be that naive. Like, I know that if we got to get with the title company to say, "Hey, what do you guys need to close?" Let's not waste time. What court orders are you looking for? We had one case recently, Mike, where the lady died and she owned three properties in an LLC. And normally you would say, "Well, LLCs, that probably doesn't need probate. It's not in the name of the person."
Mhm.
Her situation, she only had a single member operating agreement. So everything technically went to an estate. We had to do probates for three properties, and I never seen it before. So my first thing was like, I've never seen it before, but my question is, what is the title company looking for? So I took it upon myself to email title and say, "If we do this or this and this, what are you guys looking for?" By that having that conversation, that eliminated 4 months of time. We got the court order in like 2 weeks, and now they're closing on all three properties. So
Yeah, because they're really the gatekeeper that's trying to get clear title. I mean, that's what all this is for. They're trying to get clear title and making sure that that title policy, which is basically just an insurance policy, never has a claim against it because then it's going to cost them, right?
yeah, they want to make sure things are buttoned up. There's
Right.
court orders, and also, it's they're calling the shots. Like even some judges will say, yeah, if title insurance is saying it, what are we supposed to do?
Right.
If they want it, if they're not going to give the clear on insuring a policy, we're not getting it done.
Yep.
So it's so critical to have those lines of communication and be open-minded with those types of deals. But I will say it's also critical for investors to realize how important it is for those conversations and to have the patience for them as well. Because sometimes having the patience to allow the lawyer and title company to have those communications means that it can save time, energy, and effort from people scrambling around and doing the wrong things.
Yep. Yep. Let's talk a little bit about. You want to talk a little bit about family trees, and so I think a lot of investors sometimes they're like, well, they said that they had two kids, and like somebody said something or somebody said something, and then it turns out there's like, well, they were married before, and it gets really messy as to like who the lineage is that might have some say in this. So, kind of share some thoughts on, and this is probably a little bit different in every state, like as to, you know, who gets what, but share your thoughts there.
It's always a funny conversation having this with heirs on the phone.
Yeah.
I remember a conversation I had the other day with a guy, and I said, "Okay, so how are you related to the person on title?" And they said, "I think I was the husband." And I was like, "All right, so this is going to be a great conversation. You think you were the husband?" So the first thing that people need to realize is, at least in Florida, other states probably have it as well. There's a certain line, a succession line that we have to follow of who comes first to get to the next step. And it's really important to know that, not just to sound like a lawyer, but because those are the people that you would be looking for potential deals for them to sign over, sign contracts and all that.
Right.
When you're doing this, you want to be able to map this out in a way that you understand and it comes out on paper or computer. I know a lot of people have been finding these deals right now, Mike, where they're just so deep. Like they go to aunts, uncles, and cousins and second cousins. Like they get super deep that you have to map this all out. And so I remember one of the first times I saw one, somebody built it on Ancestry, and they built out the tree. They were able to put people in different spots, map it out, and you really have to start with an understanding of, first we're looking for a spouse, right? If there's no spouse, now we're looking for the children ever. And you've got to find who those people are, right? If there's three children ever, where are they? Or maybe one died before and then they have kids, or one died after. Now, what does that line look like? So these things have to get mapped out. And whenever you're building out these trees, one thing that's really important to pay attention to is the dates of death of anybody that died. So whether it's the person on title or somebody that died in the tree, the dates of death matter to the scenario. And I'll give you an example of why that matters in a big sense. So we're looking at children. I call this the probate Macarena, Mike. I do them in presentations because it
It's a
helps people
dance.
remember it. So no children. Now we're looking at parents. Now we're going up. So there's a certain line. We'll go up. How many if, are any parents alive at the time of death, or just up the tree, or then we'll go out to brothers and sisters ever. If none, nieces and nephews. If none, aunts and uncles. But when I say none, it's not that because you couldn't find it, you looked everywhere. It's like there needs to be real due diligence in searching for these people, like
Right.
like going through real resources. I know a lot of people have been big about been verified, People Finder, or white pages. There's a lot of resources out there that people have used, and some people have used Ancestry or different databases. But when you're starting to go deep, you really need to try to comb through as much as possible, because it's inevitable at some point you might need a genealogist to get you the testimony and an affidavit that is needed to get this done. But we've had some cases lately where some of these people will die and there's none of the foregoing, and now we're looking at aunts and uncles. So we had this one case where we saw the whole family tree on Ancestry. It was all built out, and of the aunts and uncles, there were about 20 aunts and uncles, and they all died before the title owner. And the relevance for the date of death and why investors need to pay attention to that when building out trees is when they die before, it drops down to their kids. So now we're looking at cousins. And so then the next question is, are any cousins alive, or did they die? Are they alive after the person that's on title? And I think there must have been, I think, another 18 or 20 cousins.
Oh, wow.
And of that crew, all of them died before the title owner except two. And that mattered because if they all died before, they're out. Now we're focused on two. So they found the two. The two were surprised they were even heirs and even inherited the property. And lo and behold, a deal that they locked up for like 150 grand, they were able to assign out for like, I think it was like 550.
Oh, wow.
So you would think that that's a deal that you're like, oh man, I don't know if I want to do all the digging and research on that, but it's the hard deals like that that are the monster deals.
No doubt.
And it took building out and learning the process of what's the statute say, what are we looking at, and you know, one thing I've learned, Mike, is it's the power of repetition. Say, you know, having somebody say it again and again and again and again and again and again of what does this look like? Who are we looking for? How do we do this? I have investors now that'll call me. They'll go, Al, I love it when you say how many children ever, because it helps me on my analysis with my acquisitions, or brothers and sisters, half brothers, half sisters, ever. Like the acquisitions now has on their scripts, like some of my quotes, and it helps because now it eliminates my time, right?
Right.
So the tree thing, I think as we go forward, Mike, into a world of more data and more competition and more saturation, I think that those are going to be the golden deals that a lot of people aren't focused on. Yes, they're going to take time. Yes, it's a little on the time consuming, but I think it's going to be worth it. And if you learn how to do it now and you tap with the right experts, and sometimes you got to JV with people that do this as a side hustle, right? Not just as a service, but say, hey, you'll JV with them because they'll help look for them. So
right.
I think it's critical.
That's awesome. Al, so thanks for sharing some time with us today. Thanks for sharing some insights on the world of probates.
Absolutely, Mike. I love it all the time. It's my favorite topic.
Hey, if folks want to connect with you, learn more about you, obviously you've got your Al Nicoletti show as well. Tell us some links. Where do they go to learn more?
Well, definitely, you got to check out the Al Nicoletti show because we had Mike Hambright on the episode, and what a great episode that was, diving into what Mike gets into with Investor Fuel and how people can really get into more of these deals. So that's on iTunes and Spotify. You can find me on the social media pages. So Facebook, I have my own YouTube channel under Al Nicoletti, Instagram, lots of reels pop in there. But if you really want to get in touch with our firm, because we're always looking for Florida investors, you can reach out to our phone number, which is 904-999-0053, and my email address, al@alnicoletti.com. And just reach out and just, tap in and mention that you were referred by Mike Hambright from the Investor Fuel podcast, and I'd be happy to talk to you and see where things are going.
Get the special treatment if they make the connection back to me. Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to give you the special treatment. Yeah, for sure.
It's good stuff. Al, thanks again for joining us today.
No, thank you again, Mike. Appreciate you.
Yeah, and everybody, Al's a great guy. Like literally, if you want to know anything about probates, he's the guy to follow for sure. And also, it's really just some words of wisdom here to make sure that you're following or you're working with experts. It'll make your life easier. It'll prevent some deals from falling through. It'll allow some deals to happen that wouldn't happen otherwise. And so you really need, as real estate investors, we're always cheap and we're like looking for the cheap way to do things, but sometimes the cheap way ends up being the most expensive way. So make sure you're working with folks that know what they're doing. So appreciate you guys a bunch, and we'll see you on the next show. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.